All right, guys, so for those of you that are familiar with my family and have followed our lives and have also followed my podcast, you know that last week was an extremely difficult week for my family as a whole and for each of us individually. Last week was extremely difficult, and we kind of had to say goodbye to my parents for somewhat, for a little bit of time, for the foreseeable future. And that was really tough.
Savannah Chrisley has had a really tough time dealing with the absence of her parents, Todd and Julie Chrisley, since they started their respective prison sentences. The reality TV star, 25, got candid about the transition on the latest episode of her Unlocked podcast, which was actually filmed on January 12th. 5 days before her parents reported to jail. So for those of you that are familiar with my family and have followed our lives and have also followed my podcast, you know that last week was an extremely difficult week for my family as a whole and for each of us individually. Savannah said, "We kind of had to say goodbye to my parents for a little bit of time for the foreseeable future. And that was really tough." So, what else has the podcaster revealed concerning her parents' jail sentence? Let's find out. Todd and Julie were sentenced to a combined 19 years behind bars after being found guilty of fraud and tax evasion in June 2022. Todd, 53, is doing his 12-year sentence in Florida at the federal prison Camp Pensacola, while Julie, 50, will serve 7 years in Kentucky at federal FMC Lexington. Despite their lengthy convictions, Savannah has stuck by her parents' side as the family continues to maintain their innocence. Just recently, she vowed to fight for her mom as the matriarch started her stint in prison. "We'll forever fight for this smile. I love you, Mama," she captioned a photo of Julie smiling on her Instagram story. The Chrisley Knows Best star went on to explain that if the podcast episode comes off as happy-go-lucky, it's because it was filmed prior to her life falling apart. "I think it's because there was a lot of hope that was had and I wasn't faced with the reality of the situation," she added, noting that the following episode will be a very intense one-on-one podcast with myself kind of giving an update on where my life's at. She even teased that the following week's episode will be a one-on-one podcast with myself to give fans an update on everything from her life to how her family members are handling Todd and Julie's sentencing. She will share an update on how her parents are doing, as she explained, "because you guys don't have one yet. I'm really looking forward to giving that update," Savannah said, "because I've seen God work in the craziest of circumstances." Encouraging fans to enjoy the episode, Savannah wrapped up her intro on a heartfelt note, stating, "Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for supporting me, my family, and Unlocked." Her latest episode featured a lighthearted, one-on-one conversation with her podcast producer and best friend, Aaron Dugan. But Savannah hasn't filmed a podcast since this episode, which was recorded on her mother's birthday on January 12th. In the episode, she says, "So I just kind of wanted to throw this in there to address that because I know a lot of people are going to be like, whoa, what is this? And this was kind of pre-life falling apart. And now podcasts that I do going forward will be posted. So I hope that kind of helps you understand things." She also intends to explain how the youngest Chrisley kids, Grayson, 16, and Chloe, 10, as well as her parents and nanny Faye, are doing. "I'm really looking forward to giving that update because I've seen God work in the craziest of circumstances. So until then, I hope you enjoy this week's podcast." Todd and Julie Chrisley officially reported to jail this past week, months after being sentenced to years in prison as a result of tax fraud and other offenses. At present, Todd is looking at 12 years of imprisonment, while Julie is to serve 7, with both also receiving 16 months of probation each. Despite their current situation, their lawyer, Alex Little, still believes they'll get a retrial at some point in the future. With that, he's provided an explanation as to why he thinks that could happen. Shortly after the Chrisleys were sentenced in November, Alex Little provided a comment, saying that he was optimistic about his client's attempt to appeal the case. Little asserted, at the time, that the trial was marred by serious and repeated errors. An alleged mistake he mentioned is that the government was lying to jurors about what taxes the couple paid. The attorney expanded upon his argument during an interview with ET, during which he brought up 2 specific points. The very beginning of this case, there was an unconstitutional search by the Georgia Department of Revenue. This court already found that it was unconstitutional, and it should have stopped the whole case in its tracks. That didn't happen, and that's certainly one of the things we're pursuing on the appeal. The second piece is one of the IRS officers who testified about whether the Chrisleys had paid certain taxes. That certainly, we think, affected the jury, and we believe it will be the basis for a new trial. Via their motion, the Chrisleys asserted that the court allowed substantial volumes of evidence at trial which were obtained in violation of the Fourth Amendment. They also say that by doing that, the court did not properly enforce its suppression order. So far, the couple's bank fraud appeal has been unsuccessful, as their request for bail and an extension on their surrender date was denied nearly 2 weeks ago. show. Another argument at play here is whether the Chrisley Knows Best stars showed remorse for their actions, and Alex Little weighed in on why that has created a dilemma for them. It's certainly true that courts want to hear defendants accept responsibility, but it's also hard to accept responsibility when you haven't done what you're accused of doing. It's a difficulty any innocent person faces when they are convicted and sentenced. I've had people who have been found not guilty of murder a decade later, and that whole time some court believed they weren't showing remorse when they were actually innocent. So, it's always a dilemma for anybody who's wrongfully convicted. Reports indicated that Julie and Todd Chrisley were not happy shortly after being sentenced to years in prison. They purportedly felt they were targeted unfairly by the judge due to their statuses as reality TV stars. Between the time they were found guilty and eventually had to report to jail, both spoke about their headspaces. Todd, in particular, mentioned that he was struggling but that his faith kept him going during the turbulent time. In a no-holds-barred interview, the Chrisley patriarch also called out his old business associate, Mark Braddock, who claimed they'd had a gay affair. Todd referred to him as a toad, among other things. The couple's children have also had their backs during this time, sharing supportive social media messages in the days leading up to their report dates. Before that, daughter Lindsay Chrisley shared how her parents used their time ahead of their surrender. She said they spent time with their family and living every day like it's your last. They reportedly did that very thing during their last weekend as free people. Earlier this month, news broke that instead of going to FCI Mariana in Florida, which would have put her near her husband Todd, Julie Chrisley was to be housed at Federal Medical Center Lexington, a prison in Kentucky. This revelation led to rampant speculation about possible medical treatment. Given Chrisley had a well-documented battle with breast cancer, the rumor mill ran a bit wild. But our sources have learned the sudden prison shift reportedly had nothing to do with the reality star's health. Those who were following the Chrisley Knows Best couple before the recent trial and sentencing may already know that Julie was fighting breast cancer for an extended period of time. First diagnosed back in 2012, she took medication for the condition for nearly a decade. It was only last year that docs said she could wean off the medication and move forward with her life. Chrisley had admitted during an episode of Chrisley Confessions that taking medication for so long had led to medical issues, mainly weight gain, pain, and brain fog. She had trouble remembering things while taking the breast cancer meds and found that lack of control to be scary. She ultimately announced she came off the medication in March of 2022. It's been a direct result of having the hysterectomy and the medication. I remember season 1 of Chrisley Knows Best. I literally spent the entire season searching for my phone because I would lay it down and I couldn't find it. It was so scary to me. Still, given her history of cancer, I suppose it's easy to see why people might have been curious about the prison shift. According to a new report at TMZ, however, the matriarch of the Chrisley clan is doing just fine. The prison in question in Lexington does have a medical and mental health unit, but the outlet also reports it has a regular minimum security prison where the reality star will be housed. The outlet did not determine why the move occurred, but it does seem that Julie will not be getting treatment at this time. For his part, her husband Todd will still be spending his prison sentence at FPC Pensacola. Todd may have to scrub toilets or do other chores during his decade-plus stay. As of right now, Todd and Julie Chrisley remain incarcerated as lawyer Alex Little seeks to get them a retrial. He went on to tell ET that the stars would want people to know that they didn't do these things and are going to fight to get their name cleared. Only time will tell regarding whether they'll be successful on that front. Will the duo finally succeed in their appeal? Or do you see both serving their entire prison sentence? Let us know in the comments below. And that's it from us today. Until next time, bye!